Welcome to another episode of In the Chair. I am joined today by Khanya Vilakazi, a political analyst and a lecturer of political science at the University of Mpumalanga. Today we're here to chat about the outcome of the 2024 national and provincial elections, which were held on the 29th of May, and saw the ANC ruling party lose its majority support for the first time since South Africa became a democracy in 1994. We saw many surprising outcomes and some that weren't so surprising. Let's start off with an interesting question for you, Khanya. What was for you the most surprising outcome of these elections?
Well, I think for me, it's the downfall of the ANC. I think preview to the elections, I always thought the ANC will probably poll at about 45 to 48%. Looking at the rise of MK, I didn't think that it will have such a strong showing. But the downfall of the ANC to even go as low as 40, that shocked me. That shocked me to the core.
Speaking about the voters, this year we saw a voter turnout of 58.64%, the worst voter turnout we've seen in our 30 years of democracy. Do you think that the abstinence from voting by South African citizens can be attributed to a lack of relatability between voters and the parties and their candidates?
Well, not necessarily. Now, we need to look at the voter in itself. Who is the average South African voter and what drives them to actually vote? Now, when you look at a country that has a tax base of about 5 to 7 million, but a social grants base of about 29 million, now you need to ask yourself this question. If that's the numbers, what are the people that predominantly rely on social grants? Let's say they're above the age of 18 with the use of NSFAS and these other social packages that government gives. What are they doing to say, I am a beneficiary of such policies or such grants, and I'd really like to put my views across in terms of my votes, in terms of do I like it, do I want it to improve, and so forth. So we need to then start asking the voter themselves, how do you think South Africa is going to move forward if you don't put your point of view across? And we can't blame political parties, because political parties are there to just fight for power. But now the thing is, if they can get their constituents on the day to vote for them, then that's good for them. But the broader sense of society is suffering, because we're now looking at about 42% of voters not actually coming out to vote. And in recent years, the IEC has spoken about youth voter apathy. The young people of South Africa do not see themselves in the political landscape of South Africa. Hence, they do not come out to vote. But yet again, what's most concerning is that youth unemployment is sitting at about 45% of the country. Now, we are looking at people that are unemployed, but still they don't want to vote. Now, there's a very big disconnect between the two, and that's what, as a broader sense of society, we need to look at in terms of how can we rectify it and get a more robust voter turnout.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier the 2026 local government elections. If we can turn the page back to 2021, we saw many more diverse municipal councils emerge from these elections that featured many more parties than what we had previously seen. We've now seen this happen nationally in the National Assembly this year. Do you think this will positively affect the overall governing of the country, or is it a case of too many cooks in the kitchen?
Well, it's a very fine line to walk. I truly do believe that it's just too many cooks in the kitchen. Because when you look at why political parties run for power, it's generally not ideological. When you look at different political parties in this current voting season, most of them are aligned. It's either they're far left or center or far right. But they yet represent a very diverse background in terms of the target population, but ideologically they're still the same. So I think there are too many cooks in the kitchen, and it doesn't bode well for the people waiting for the food to be prepared.
I see. And if we can move now to a provincial level, and in Mpumalanga specifically, do you find our provincial results this year at all surprising? And could you possibly elaborate on what your answer would be to that?
Well, not surprising per se, because I did foresee that there was going to be a very good turnout for the MK, especially in the Mkondo area, which has predominantly been an area that the ANC has been very disgruntled by, or ANC voters have been disgruntled by provincial governments and the ANC in itself. So it's nothing surprising, but the most surprising thing is that now the ANC is polling at about 50 to 51%, and that's very bad for the ANC going into the local government elections, because the minute it still polls at that level, MK is going to start owning municipalities. There'll be much more coalition in a provincial, sorry, in a local government sphere than the ANC would really like.
Do you think there's almost a case for voters are beginning to stop voting for the ANC and they're voting for candidates and individuals, and it's the individuals who bring support to the ANC and not ANC bringing support to the ANC?
That's very true. I think the ANC needs to wake up. They need to understand that it's no longer this huge movement that pulls in people, but it requires individuals that can pull in people. And then these individuals then have the presence to dictate to the party how it moves. Because the thing is, people don't know the ANC. They know an individual. They've seen this individual grow within their community, this individual delivering to this community, and in turn creating this loyal voting base. Now, if this person is then gets chastised by the same ANC, the same people that voted for the ANC through him will then look for another outlet to vote for. And it will be quite dangerous if the ANC thinks that it is bigger than the ANC itself is bigger than the individuals that make up of the ANC.
Absolutely. You mentioned the individuals delivering in their communities and that kind of thing. What sort of effect do you anticipate these elections to have on service delivery, if any, in Mpumalanga?
Well, very minimal. And I'll tell you why. Unfortunately, when you look at the leadership of political parties, they're not where their voting base are. Had they lived in the same area as their voting base, things would be much different. Services would be found in the most remote areas of the province. But because they generally move towards urban areas and choose the most nicest place, if I can put it that way, to live in, it then becomes very difficult for services to be delivered in the vast majority of people in Mpumalanga.
So, in a way, there's almost a disconnect between those who offer service delivery and those who receive service delivery.
There's a very huge disconnect, because I can tell you that the same people that hold themselves up as people that are the ones delivering services are not generally the ones giving the same services to the people. I'll give an example. When politicians speak about the safety and security of South Africans, they are driven by heavily armed men. Whenever they go to shops, they go to the shops with heavily armed men. Therefore, they are very much insulated. But myself and you, we are very exposed to the same people that they're saying that the police are adequate enough to protect us. Now, that's a very huge disconnect. But it's only when they've lost their blue lights, when we can bump into them at crossings whilst they're driving their own vehicles, where you realize that
Yes.
the world is not as safe as you thought it was when you're in power.
Absolutely. Nationally, again, do you think that without Mkonto Sizwe taking part in these elections, the ANC's loss of support would have still been as significant and that they could have still lost their 50% majority?
Definitely, they were going to lose their 50% majority, but it's the severity of it
Yes.
that MK exacerbated, because they then pulled away votes from people that were sympathetic to the president, former President Zuma, and that were disgruntled with the state of affairs in which the ANC was being run under the Ramaphosa administration.
Absolutely. And with Mkonto Sizwe's rise, do you think they are here to stay, or do you expect it to be another case of COPE and UDM, where things are great for a few years and for a few elections, but over time support sort of dissipates?
Unfortunately, it will implode, and it will implode in a very quick manner, because people that are administrating around MK are people that are from the ANC that are disgruntled. If MK is, for an example, an instrument to which the ANC is able to gain power, then they might have a bit of staying power.
Absolutely. Khanya, that's the extent of my questions for you today. I would like to thank you for your time, coming out to see us and to sit in the chair with me and have a conversation. I am particularly interested to see how the next 2 weeks play out, and I'm sure you are on the edge of your seat watching every single bit of news that comes out.
It's comedy all around. The rhetoric from political parties would make anybody just laugh out because everybody doesn't know what the future holds, but everybody hopes at the end of the day, when the music stops, they have a chair to sit in.
Exactly. Khanya, thank you very much.
Thanks, bro.
Appreciate your time.
No problem.